Let's talk about how to get out of paying a $90,000 medical bill. A lot of times I introduce myself as the doc that got out of paying a $90,000 medical bill, and you can too. Let me show you how. And I talk about this a lot because it's such a huge part of why people with insurance go into a lifetime of debt, or even worse, or bankruptcy. So the reason why is because those of us that have insurance get errors in our medical bills. I would say it is the biggest reason why we can't afford medical bills when we have insurance. So let me talk about what I mean. So I tell the story that I had to have emergency surgery and rolled into the ER and woke up after having this surgery and had a hospital roommate. And my hospital roommate was really sweet, young mom of two very young toddlers. And because her children were so young, she couldn't work outside the home at that time. And her spouse, her husband, was an employee at a 24-hour diner. So clearly very, modest income, right? And she was telling me about why she was thinking about leaving against medical advice. It turns out this was the second time she had been in the hospital for this reason of some rare thing that basically it was kind of like a weird cause of a stroke in a very young person. And they did the workup the year prior, and she was told finally at the end of that week she had been there that you're clear and safe to go home. She said that before she left, a rep from the hospital billing department came into her room and said, before you can leave, you have to sign this agreement to pay whatever your insurance doesn't pay. And I said, well, did you sign it? Did you agree to it? And she said, yes, of course. Yeah. When she told me this story, she says, you know what? I think I'm going to leave, even though the doc said I'm not quite safe to leave yet. I just can't afford another bill like I got last year. Instantly, when she tells me this, the curtain dropped and I saw red. I was so enraged because I knew that she did not owe that bill, that money. What she described was a balance bill. A balance bill is when you have insurance and you go to an in-network provider, meaning that provider has agreed to say whatever they pay for this insurance company's members, whatever they pay for the services that they bill, that they will accept it as payment in full, no matter how little it is. Now, when I say that they will accept it as payment in full, that doesn't count if you haven't met your annual deductible. And most of us don't in an average year if we don't have like a chronic ongoing condition, or a family member who's on our insurance doesn't have an ongoing chronic condition. If you do not have a deductible that you've met, or if you have co-insurance, that doesn't count, right? So you may get a bill from the provider saying, hey, yeah, your insurance paid this or nothing, you owe this. In those cases, check to make sure that you've met your annual deductible. If you've met your annual deductible, whatever the insurance pays, the provider has to accept as payment in full. And number two, if you have co-insurance as part of your plan, after you've met your annual deductible, whatever your insurance agrees to pay, you're going to owe a percentage of that. So that is what's supposed to happen if you go to an in-network provider for your care. That's the bill you're supposed to get. Only what your in-network provider has agreed to accept as payment in full as being part of in-network contract agreement with your insurance plan that you happen to be a member of. Balance billing is when the in-network provider says, hey, yeah, you know the medical care that you received that we provided you? We charge $100 for that service, and your insurance only paid $10. You owe us $90. That is balance billing. And it's a form of contract fraud. And the reason why most of us patients don't know that this is a thing and we can't really do anything about it is because the provider has the contract with the insurance company. So the contract is between them. They're not going to know when their members are being balanced billed by in-network providers. So that's the definition of balance billing. And that's why you have to call and do the 3 steps of the only right way to pay a medical bill, or do the 3 Ps. Pull an accurate itemized bill with CPT codes, right? It's not a real bill. It's not an accurate bill unless it's itemized with CPT codes. 2, you're going to price check it. You're going to go to your favorite AI source or upload it to medicalbillrelief.com and see what the lowest retail price is for the services you received. And while you're doing that, look at the back of your insurance card if you have insurance, call the number and ask for an EOB, explanation of benefits, for those dates of service that you received care. And you don't owe whatever it is that they're asking you until your insurance company pays whatever they're going to pay. Once you get that, you can find out, okay, are they in network with my insurance? And if so, what did they charge? What did they bill me for? Meaning, what did they bill my insurance for? And then when you get the bill, it should be after the insurance says that they paid whatever they're going to pay. And then you can go to step 3 and say, okay, what's left over, if any, if I've met my deductible, and the coinsurance, if you have any for your particular insurance plan. The story is that once I realized that my hospital roommate had been tricked into signing agreement to be balance billed, I explained what balance billing is and what happened in her case from what she was describing to me. She said that she would go over the bill with the hospital's billing department and we would go from there so that she would not feel like she's basically choosing her money or her life by leaving against medical advice. Thank goodness she agreed to stay and got the care that she needed. 6 months, maybe even 9 months after, I got a balance bill from the same hospital to the tune of almost $90,000. And they were doing the same thing. The summary bill was 3 lines. The first line was like OR services and inpatient care. Was in the hospital for like 2 or 3 days after the surgery. It said like $350,000. And underneath that, it said laboratory services. And it had 5 digits after that, which I recognize as a CPT code for lab services, pathology services, where anytime you have surgery and they remove something from the body, they have to send it to pathology to make sure there's nothing hiding in it like they don't expect, like cancer, or they do expect and they're double checking. And the third line was payment/adjustments from insurance. And it was something like $260,000. And then the last line was total patient responsibility, like almost $90,000. Oh my gosh, this was cracking me up. I just thought, oh, wow. Unfortunately, this particular medical center, this is their business model. This is part of their business model, is to trick folks into thinking that a balance bill, meaning people who have insurance, and that particular hospital is in network with your insurance company. They are saying that agreement that we will accept as payment in full from the insurance for being in network with them. They just like pretend that's not a thing. So I see that they've made this attempt to balance bill me with this statement. It's not a bill, right? It's not a real bill. So I call the insurance company to see what their EOB says, to see what they paid the provider. So I talk with the customer service rep who answers the phone, the number in the back of my insurance card, and she says, hey, yes, we paid the fair and customary rate that we paid, and that was the adjustment. And the amount that they asked us to pay was almost $90,000. I thought, okay, that's really interesting. That's the same amount they're asking me to pay. So, they're trying to play both ends against the middle, right? Double dipping. So I hang up with the insurance company. Thank you so much for that info. I really appreciate it. And I call the billing department at the hospital to find out what they had to say. And the customer service rep for the hospital says, oh my gosh, $90,000. Yeah, that's a lot of money. You can't be expected to pay that all at once. Can I transfer you to a team member who can help you make a payment plan? And I said, no, thank you. And I hung up because I knew I didn't owe any of that money. I'd already met my annual deductible for the year. They're in network with my insurance, which means they've signed a contract that this is what they've agreed to accept. And that's what was paid by the insurance company. And I didn't have any co-insurance with this particular plan either. So I knew I didn't owe any of it. I just ignored it. I was so entertained, not really entertained. I was just like, I really laugh so I don't cry. I'm cracking up like, oh, wow. I just had to get it off my chest. I had to share this with somebody. So I call my best friend in the middle of the day. She picks up and I tell her the story and I'm cracking up. The author of What Your Doctor Wants You to Know to Crush Medical Debt, right? They tried to balance bill me to the tune of almost $90,000. And I'm just cracking up, laughing, and she's quiet. And finally, she says, "You know what, Virgie? You're the only person I know who's laughing when everybody else would be curled up in a ball crying." And I realized, she's right. And this is why I do this work. I put this story in the book, What Your Doctor Wants You to Know to Crush Medical Debt. And I tell this story all the time because it's just such a great example of the biggest thing that I think balance billing is part of the biggest reason why people with insurance go into huge amounts of medical debt. And as of last year, 51% of medical debt and bankruptcy was with people who had insurance. And balance billing is just a huge part of those 80% of errors. If you have insurance too often, it's balance billing. And the balance billing, when it's huge amounts, that's what's going to get you into trouble. So anyway, just moved on, tell the story all the time. And about a year after this happened, I was talking to my best friend and we were talking about something about bills. And she said, "Well, by the way, Virgie, did you ever pay that $90,000 bill from the hospital?" I said, "Well, of course not. Why would I do that?" She said, "You didn't pay any of it." I said, "No, why would I pay any of it?" And she says, "Well, are you sure that they didn't send it to collections or something? Did you check the credit bureaus or your FICO score?" I said, "Who are you talking to? I just refinanced my mortgage. I have an 850 FICO score. No, I didn't pay that." So this is why many people think that they owe by any means necessary and have to pay whatever they get in the mail from a medical provider. I'd say 8 to 9 times out of 10, it's not the case. 80% of all medical bills have errors, and some of them are huge. And one of the huge errors is balance billing. Don't let it happen to you. Now you know you're not going to let it happen to you, and you can find out more and get more support at medicalbillrelief.com.